From then on, it was shoot after shoot after shoot. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I don't remember a lot. I do remember being a favorite of Fiji Women, which was a wonderful magazine newspaper, and the editor was Bernadette Rounds Nganilau. It was the publisher was George Rubine, and the journalist was Ana Langere Tambua, I'm sure. But I was a favorite of that, and we had many boutiques in Suva in the 80s and 90s, and so of course and the designers of that time were doing amazing things. So there was shoots galore. As I said, Fiji Women, I remember Sajawat was a wonderful shop in an arcade, one of the arcades in Suva, and just, fashion parades everywhere. I got to go to Nandi and I was invited to the weekly or the monthly fashion parades they used to have in Nandi, and I was considered a special, guest featured model because I remember the MC saying my name, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. That was really cool. And what else? I remember. I don't have any photographs of this time, sadly. There's so many images and imagery missing. And archives at Fiji Times or any of the newspapers we looked in 2022, there's not much left, and it's quite sad for Fiji's modern history. But anyway, I'm trying to fill in the gaps as much as possible. During this time, I was also back and forth living in Melbourne, and I was modeling there, and where I got to sing a little bit as well. And so I was back and forth, Fiji and Melbourne, and so seeing really what the world was like, 1989, 1990, 1991. This was a really interesting time, and a transitional time, of course, as the end of a decade always is. But it was really progressive. Everyone felt hopeful, regardless of what was going on in the world, and also because of what was going on in the world. It's like, okay, we're seeing war unfold on us. Back then, it was the Gulf War, really unfold right in front of television, and in front of our eyes, sorry, on television. So we were watching all of this, and we didn't have television in Fiji at that time, but we were watching a lot of Australian and American programs because of the videos we all then had to watch the TV shows. We all were really big into Dallas and Dynasty and all the shows that came around that time. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, we know, In Living Color, all the Black American shows we used to get at that time. It was absolutely on video. It was fantastic. This is how this little island of 300 islands or so got to really see the world through that way. And plus being so multicultural, we are a microcosm of the world. I remember a fashion parade in 1990. Oh my goodness me. And this was a Pacific Forum, Pacific leaders. It was a trade forum, and they had all, the conference was held in Fiji at the Isale Hotel in between Suva and Lami, overlooking the harbour, and also, unfortunately, the Lami rubbish dump at that time. If those of you who remember those times, I'm sorry I brought that memory right back into your senses. It wasn't good, but still, Isale Hotel was absolutely fabulous, and this is where the finale fashion parade, the finale of the week was, and it was showcasing the artistry and the designs of Fiji artists and designers. And I was asked to do the closing walk for this show by Bernadette Nganilau, who was the editor of Fiji Women and also one of the major names in fashion back in the day. To start off the fashion show was the traditional. So it was a young Kaiviti woman, indigenous woman, with her hair to depict that she is a virgin, the plait to depict that she is a virgin. And I recall she was wearing perhaps liku, which was the traditional skirt of the Kaiviti before Sulu. By the way, Sulu is a colonial introduction. It's not traditional. It is a colonial thing to denote the conversion to Christianity. Going back to the fashion parade. And she came out to, that was the symbology of the ancient, the traditional Fiji. And in between, all of us walking in fabulous clothes. I don't really remember any of the designers. Perhaps, oh gosh, I certainly know the garment I was wearing was created by local artists by the name of Tessa Miller and George Evans, and they're still, I believe, designing or being artists today. So it was a pair of palazzo pants and a very, very tiny bolero jacket, so tiny. I don't know why I bothered wearing it. It was barely skimming my breasts, and I was asked to wear it topless. I was asked if I could go out to represent modern Fiji, where we have the sensibilities of our cultural ways, of course, but we are also ahead and progressive after all, as our national newspaper said, first in the world. So there you go. We thought we were too. So we were leading the way and being very progressive. So I was asked to walk without a top inside this basically shoulder material bolero I was wearing. It's beautiful colors. I remember it was blues and purples, and I can't quite remember the print, but it was stunning. I do remember that they printed a photograph on the front page of one newspaper, and I was doing this because I was like, oh, when I walked out, I realized that I'm walking out in front of, Pacific leaders, but I'm doing it for art, and I'm doing it to represent modern Fiji. And it was amazing. It was no scandal at all. Everyone was like, well, this is very progressive, and that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, no scandal, no fallout. Fiji is unfairly conservative now in some ways, but okay, let's go back to that time. So that was a wonderful, wonderful memory for me. I don't have any photographs. We tried to look at, as I said, in the Fiji Times archives. They have nothing. The library there is in a terribly poor condition, and it's a bit of a shame. Anyway, so there were lots and lots of shoots, and I was still a Tiki Togs model. And when Tanya Whteside took over the mantle, she also had her eponymous label, Tanya Whteside, and she had boutiques all over Suva, all over Viti Levu, especially particularly in the hotels. So there was one at Sheraton, Iri Masay, I remember. I'm not sure if it was then at that stage, perhaps later on, but around 1991, she was the main designer. And we did a wonderful shoot, and this was around 1991. We did a wonderful shoot on Toberua Island, which is just off Suva. And it was four of us. It was me, Millie, and Mary. Mary was this gorgeous redhead of Fiji. Because in Fiji, very multicultural, so there are lots of Europeans who are also very much part of Fiji. And then Yuta, she was an expatriate, a daughter of an expatriate family. And we were all just basically, showcasing Fiji. And it was a wonderful, wonderful collection. It was all silks and deep colors, burgundies and emeralds. And I am kicking myself to this day for not having something from that time. I do collect Tiki Togs, especially Tanya Whteside garments, and I'm fairly lucky to have the pieces I have. From what I understand, no one seems to have kept their pieces, and which is very few people have, and it's a shame. And I hope if you do have a Tanya Whteside or a Tiki Tog piece garment, then please revere it. This is part of Fiji's modern urban history. So this shoot on Toberua we had an international photographer. His name, Alan Harris, and Alan and I are still friends. We have recently reconnected, and on his site, on his photography site, he has a photograph of me on his site depicting his portfolio. What an honor, because Alan and I did shoots, separate from the Tiki Tog shoot, because he really enjoyed photographing me, and it was wonderful because he helped me. He helped me as a model. He gave me tips and he guided me. A good photographer is a director, and they are able to make a model a better model. And from then, of course, when I finally became a photographer, and I have been photographing actually since I was 10. I didn't turn professional until I was 40, but I have been photographing all throughout my teens, etc., and 20s. So Alan gave me a lot of guidance on how to, frame and see light, etc. So we did wonderful, wonderful shoots together in the morning light. and talking about life and talking about science and astrology. I remember it was wonderful. I could say he was a bit of a mentor then, and it's wonderful to still be in contact with him. And hopefully later this year we have some other news to share with you. But stay tuned for all of that on the Lives of Our Days. But going back to that was a wonderful, wonderful shoot. I really enjoyed it. I remember a photograph taken for Coca-Cola that should have been a billboard for Coca-Cola at that time. But, I don't know, perhaps they're a little bit conservative. So around this time too, I suppose I should talk about the fact that I then started singing. I had been singing in school. I had been performing since I was a child. I was a Kathak performer since I was a child. So I'm very used to being on stages. I didn't think I could sing, but I knew because of my voice. My voice used to be very deep and mellifluous. It's not quite. I mean, age takes its toll. Plus, I have been a parent. And when you're yelling at your children to pick up their things, all of a sudden you have no time to be deep and mellifluous and velvety. You're basically shrieking a little. But anyway, so I did know that I had a quality to my voice and particularly suited to jazz. So one day when I was sitting at the legendary cottage in Suva, Carnarvon Street. Was it Carnarvon? I can't ever remember what the name is. Looking across Shell service station from our vantage point, sitting in the cottage, and seeing that Gary, who was the owner of Traps. Now, if you know Traps, you know Traps. This is legendary Traps. Okay, it started off as I have been going to Traps since I was 13. It's a pub, it's a bar, not a pub, it's a bar. But back then it was actually a Mexican restaurant. And I have been going there to this Mexican restaurant since I was 13. But by now, in 1991, it is solely a bar. It has a back bar and it's jazz nights. It is known for the music that it played. The bartenders of Traps have always been cool. They've been chosen for their innate coolness. And I have an insider, association with the cool bartenders of Traps. And also they were friends and people we know, etc. But I, looking across, and I wanted to sing, and my then friend said to me, well, let's go and ask Gary. And because the jazz band, Tui Ravai and the Freelancers, they were rehearsing because Wednesday nights was jazz nights at Traps. Oh my gosh. So I don't know how I had the audacity to do this, but egged on by my friend, we went over to Gary, and Gary knew us. Of course, we were like partying in there pretty much every night, during curfew times too. And I said, Gary, I want to sing. And he said, okay, well, don't tell me, tell them. What are you asking me for? Tell them. Go, okay, set. I'm like, all right, cool. And them, Tui Ravai and the Freelancers, we're not talking about some just amateur garage band. We're talking about the Freelancers headed by Tui Ravai. Oh my gosh. So I remember sitting there watching them and then gathering up the courage to get up to them, and they're looking at each other like, who's this, And also I remember I didn't, this is only a revelation that has come to me in my old age. They're probably thinking, okay, who's this, semi-clad woman? Because back then we would be all wearing really like Band-Aids for mini skirts and things like that. My uniform it was just this black mini skirt, black chunky boots, black chunky socks, and a white off-the-shoulder gypsy top that at night I would tie up and make it a little bit less gypsy and a little bit more bikini, I think. I don't know, that was Suva at the time. So I said I'd like to sing, and the song I had in mind, which is known as my signature song, was Fever by Peggy Lee. And one thing you should know about Fiji musicians is all you have to do is hum a few bars, and they're like, okay, and they start playing, and it's like, whoa. So they started playing it, and then the drummer joined in, and then and then it's like, okay, all right. I might just sing. So I sang, and I don't remember much more after that, because the first time I sang on a stage in Fiji or anywhere really, oh my gosh, it was the Wednesday night, the jazz night, and I recall people were there because it was a very popular night. Suva Society, as I said, we were all very much into jazz and blues and R&B and all of that. And our music was Prince and back to life, back to reality. That is all of that. And pump up the jam too. So it was full. And the back bar prior to that wasn't full. And then all of a sudden it was full and I'm about to make my debut. I don't remember much, but my muscle memory does, because I'm now all of a sudden feeling that, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So I can see my friends are there. I'm like, okay, that's great. But what are you all doing here? All these other people, someone somewhere may have a photograph. This is way before the times of, smartphones. A part of me says, well, thank gosh we didn't have smartphones because we would be buried in them. But also I wish we did, because I would have had an epic feed on social media. I still do. But there is a photograph somewhere of me singing on that stage on the Wednesday nights that I sang there. But my first time ever was me singing Fever with my back to the audience. And I really should just counterplug one of our other shows, The Riff, which is our show about everything music. And our first episode, Dwayne and I are talking about our associations and introduction to, music and gigging. And Dwayne's first gig and my first gig, we have this absolute similarity where we both just froze. And I froze and I turned my back to the audience and I sang with my back to the audience, looking at Tui like, Tui, I'm frightened. And Tui's like, it's okay, just go. You go, you look good, you sound good. It's okay, gang, set, go. And because of that, I was able to. And then after that, I did turn around the second time and I added to my repertoire and I sang a few other songs. And at that stage, Manoa Twisty, I'm sorry, I don't know his real name, but his voice, forget Al Jarreau, Manoa's voice was incredible. And of course, Michelle Rounds was the female lead of the Freelancers. And she is still singing, I believe, somewhere in the Middle East now, still doing, wowing audiences with that golden voice she has. But she was the voice, and I'm like, what am I doing on this stage singing next to these people who are actual singers? Who am I? But I'm a performer. I have something. So I know that I enjoyed it. I loved expressing an emotion through my voice, even if my voice wasn't the most perfect and I couldn't hit the key, or I didn't know what key I sang in, or if my voice cracked on mid, warble. I used to sing a lot of Lisa Stansfield songs too, Change. If I could change. So I won't sing that. I will not do that to your eardrums right now. But maybe on The Riff, so join us for that. So that was my entry into singing. And then I guess from 1989 to 1982, this is where I was just, the electricity of youth. I was putting it to good use. I was writing, I was on radio, on RF3 and Double R FM, and producing as well. This is the time of radio, back when radio was all reel-to-reel and cartridges and turntables. And so we had to be our own producers and presenters. So I was a producer, presenter, copywriter, because I was also producing ads. We were, I was mentored by legends in radio and really showing us how to splice. The term still exists about cutting and pasting, splicing. We had to do it literally. Tape, you had to make sure you cut that tape at where you needed to cut it to then attach it. I don't know how we did this, but it was real skill. And also the cart machines, we had to reuse the cartridges, and we had this magnetic thing that you had to actually make sure you wiped the cartridges, of the old recordings on it. And you could always tell, because if you plug the cartridge in, you could always hear a bit of a, then oh my gosh, someone didn't clean that cartridge properly. And so you'd have to take it upon yourself, and we'd be all the presenters will be walking around the corridors of FBC with our cartridges trying. There's amazing times in radio and reel-to-reel and turntables. Look, there are DJs, great, whatever you can do. But back then we had to do this on radio while talking, while making sure we don't mess this up, because we are live on air. So you've got to introduce the song and also talk about something. And if something's going wrong because someone is knocking on the door, on the window outside saying, come on, keep keep talking, we're late with the news. It's like, okay, we're going to... And it was just, and then keeping really cool, your voice is modulated, but behind the scenes, you are going nuts with it, lining up of the turntable, because you are going to then, okay, fill in this gap with a song that wasn't programmed, but you're going to have to play it because they've asked you to keep talking. And so you've got to cue it. And one thing that most of us listening to radio hated was when the announcers would talk right up to when the singer starts singing on a song, when, of course, people wanted to record the entire song. So I wasn't going to do that to people who were listening to me. So I made sure that any song that had a long, wonderful intro to it, I'd put in between songs, or I'd make sure I would lead into it in such a way that the intro music could still be played. Wow. Amazing, amazing things. Of course, I did some naughty things too, like sometimes when I had to... Look, I'm not going to get fired now, so it doesn't matter. Sometimes when I did the Saturday shows, or the party shows, the non-stop party music, I would program like 3-4 hours of music, and then just play and go to traps. And people would say, "I just heard you on radio." I'm there. Anyway. That was fun times. And those are the days you could actually smoke inside the radio station. My God, what a horror. But it was absolute fun. So that was 1989 to 1992. I spent a wonderful few years just back and forth and singing and modeling and on radio. And I did get into singing, actually. I just remembered, because karaoke was huge in Fiji. And brothers by the name of Kirk and Luke introduced karaoke to Fiji, and we could sing, we were all singing, etc. So that's also why I knew I could sing, and to marry that to my ability to be very comfortable on a stage. Well, I could do this, so that's why I was singing. Now 1992 is where everything changed, and that's another story.